All right, let's dive deep into the architecture of a dream. We're talking, of course, about Christopher Nolan's Inception. Today we're going to unpack how this absolute masterpiece was built piece by piece over an entire decade.
So, get this. Before it was the slick, mind-bending sci-fi heist that we all know and love, Inception started out as something way, way darker. And I don't mean just a few small changes. The entire identity of the film was completely different. It was born as a straight-up horror movie.
So let's rewind the clock. Back in the early 2000s, you can just forget about the stylish, globe-trotting team of specialists. Nolan's very first idea was way more focused on a really primal fear, the absolute terror of having your own mind invaded.
Yeah, that original 80-page script, it was pure psychological horror. The whole story was about how incredibly vulnerable you are when you're asleep, and the sheer horror of some predatory force breaking into the most private corners of your mind. The goal wasn't to plant an idea. It was all about stealing secrets from someone who was completely and totally defenseless.
And when you put the two ideas side by side like this, the difference is just, wow. The first concept was all about personal violation, this really intimate kind of terror. But the final film, it completely reframes everything as professional espionage. The stakes totally change to a high-risk, team-based, almost corporate operation. So, this begs the question, right? Why the decade-long wait? Why did Nolan write this thing and then just sit on it for almost 10 years? Well, it turns out there were two massive problems he knew he had to crack before he could even think about making this movie.
This timeline really lays out a strategy. You see, after he wrote that first draft in 2002, he knew he just wasn't ready to direct a film this big. So he went off and made the Batman films. He was playing the long game, proving to the studios and probably to himself that he could handle these huge budgets and incredibly complex action sequences. That's what gave him the clout to finally get Inception off the ground.
Now this was the real puzzle, the core structural problem. The horror genre just couldn't handle the sheer amount of information you needed to understand this world. I mean, can you imagine watching a scary movie and right when the tension is at its peak, the movie stops to explain dream sharing, multiple levels, and time dilation? It would completely kill the mood. But that massive problem actually led him directly to the solution. He didn't just change the genre because it sounded cool. Nolan himself called the switch to a heist film a structural necessity. It was the only way to make it work.
And here is the light bulb moment, in Nolan's own words. The heist genre is basically built for this stuff. It has a natural framework for explaining all the complicated rules and what the team's objective is. It was exactly what the story needed. And that's so classic Nolan, right? Using the familiar rules of one genre to sneak in these huge philosophical ideas.
And this structure is really the secret sauce of the final film. Think about it. First, you assemble the team. You get the forger, the architect, the chemist, and each one has a super clear role. Then, you bring in the newcomer, Ariadne, who basically acts as our stand-in. She gets to ask all the questions that we have. So, as the team teaches her the rules, they're really teaching us. It's brilliant. All that complicated information is just woven right into the story.
Okay, so we solved the logic puzzle. But a perfectly explained set of rules doesn't make a good movie, right? If the audience doesn't care, it doesn't matter. The film still needed a powerful, human heart. And this led to another huge decision. Nolan was not interested in making some kind of scientifically accurate documentary about sleeping. Nope. He intentionally created what some people have called neuro-nonsense, because he wanted to build a world with clear emotional stakes, not one that was clinically precise.
I mean, just look at this breakdown. It's fascinating. In real life, our dreams are totally illogical, all over the place. But in Inception, the characters have to be super logical and organized because a heist needs a plan. Shared dreaming isn't a real thing, and time doesn't really slow down like that when we sleep. Nolan basically bent or broke every scientific rule just to make the story more compelling.
And this right here, this is the reason why he did all that. The entire, massive, complicated heist is really just a vehicle for Dom Cobb's incredibly personal story. His battle with the guilt over his wife Mal and his burning desire to get home to his kids, that's the emotional engine that drives the whole film.
And all of this brings us to that famous ending. You know what I'm talking about, the spinning top. It's so much more than just a clever cliffhanger. It's the perfect fusion of the movie's complicated rules and its emotional core.
See, the real point of that last scene isn't whether the top falls over or not. The point is that Cobb walks away from it. He doesn't wait to see.
He makes a choice to accept this new reality where he's finally with his children. To him, that emotional truth is way more real and way more important than any totem.
And that's really the ultimate idea that Inception leaves us wrestling with. It's challenging all of us to think about what really defines the world we choose to live in. It's not just a movie about dreams. It's about the powerful, subjective realities that we build for ourselves every single day.